Welcome back to I Now Pronounce You Divorce, Malone Hatley PC's podcast, where each week we take a deep dive into issues that our clients and potential clients are going through to try to help them along their way through this process. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Erin. And Erin, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Jackson. I'm a financial advisor at Financial Growth Partners, and I help people get their financial lives back on track, especially during big transitions like divorce.
So, Erin, when we talk, I'm glad you brought up transitions. I think that when people are going through the divorce process, they have a lot going on emotionally. So, with your expertise, how do you pull people? You know that they have to deal with the emotional side, but how do you pull them back to worrying about numbers and figures and their future?
I think it really comes down to just clarity and focus. So taking the emotion out of it is difficult for anyone to do, but really just focusing on the facts. So, okay, what do you need to do? Get your statements, get your accounts, know what you have, so that way you can have steps to move forward and get someone in your corner that can kind of walk you through this, like a financial advisor. Sometimes you also need the therapist or something like that, but it's going to take a team to kind of help rebuild.
So, if you are the spouse that's been kept in the dark, right? I like what you said. Some people look at finances as being like, hey, I'm not smart enough to manage the finances. I'm not this to manage the finances. And I tell people, I say, look, finances is 1 + 1. That's all it is. Sometimes 1 + 0. Hopefully it's not 0 - 1. But, I try to bring it into simplification, but how can someone start to catch up if they were the ones kept in the dark?
Starting by not panicking. I think that's our first instinct to do, but then just gather the basics. So statements, get your credit report. You really want to have like a snapshot of where you are, and then you'll be able to create your own system from that. So working and building your financial education with, or vocabulary, so to speak, with an advisor, so you know what you have and what it means. Divorce can actually be, of course, a reset, but many people feel like they're more confident managing money after divorce, and I think that's actually really cool.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Malone, and thank you so much for joining us on I Now Pronounce You Divorced. Today, I'm joined by my partner, Charles Hatley, and we have as our guest, Mary Fisher from Five Rings Financial. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So today, what we want to talk about is the financial impact of going into a divorce, going through a divorce, coming out of a divorce, kind of all of the good, bad, and ugly, and how you can properly prepare yourself for going through that. So first, Mary, can you just kind of introduce yourself and a little bit about your company and kind of overall what your mission is?
Thank you so much, Rebecca and Charles, for having me. I'm excited to talk to you and your viewers today. Five Rings Financial is a company that's focused on helping people understand how to get the most out of their money. Money can be a really challenging issue, and of course, divorce, right at the crossroads. It seems like the most important thing. So for over 41 years, the CEO of our company, Mike Wilk, has been serving people in this way, first by educating them on how money works. And that's not just like the newbies, that's grown-ups who make a lot of money, but understanding maybe some of the things that they've never been taught about how money works. And so we help people secure their finances. We're in the lane of the financial services industry that helps people reduce risk and helps them have money that they can count on, both in an emergency situation, illness, that sort of a situation, and to make sure that they have income for the rest of their lives. So a little bit of everything, and that's our market, middle and upper middle class America.
So when you have somebody come in and talk to you and they're like, well, I know what's going on, right? Like I saw this dude on TikTok or Instagram, or my so-and-so told me that I need to be investing in Bitcoin. Starting in 2025, I'm going to invest in all Bitcoin. How do you handle nicely taking down those preconceptions they have and building up actual knowledge for them?
I love your question. This is a massive challenge. And what's great about social media is what you said, that you get exposed to things that maybe you never were exposed to before. So that's good. But it really is the education process. So for us, focusing on education first, that breaks down the barriers of like, I got to pay some money to be there. Similar to like when you do a consult, the first consult, it's like, come and breathe and tell us your story. And normally what happens is when someone comes in, they'll say, I saw this on TikTok, or I learned a little bit about this tax-free business owner strategy, or I heard about this thing called living benefits, or I heard some way that you can double your money in 20 seconds, And so I think it's all about relationship and understanding where somebody is and where they want to go. And so we never charge for an appointment, and we never have any pressure that people do business with us. What we want to help them do is get organized and evaluate where they are and where they want to go. And, money is math and science, but humans are emotional. So we got to kind of take that into account. And sometimes in a divorce situation, you might have one partner who's super analytical, and follows a certain philosophy and is unmovable. And then we have another one who feels like an idiot because this person's so certain of where they are. And I promise you, neither one of them is right. So, we look at money really in 10-year periods of time because, for example, one of the things that we do for people is we help them protect their IRAs and roll it into a safe place that's growing. Well, 11, 10 years ago, those interest rates that we were able to give them were really low. It was safe, which is what people were looking for, but the interest rates were really low. Well, the bad news about interest rates rising on mortgages and things like that is interest rates are rising in these fixed and guaranteed accounts. So now we're able to offer those to people. So if I have a client, a friend, and someone I'm introduced to, I like to find out where they are and then educate them on what's available. We are really in that safe growth area. So I never belittle anybody for taking risks. I never belittle anybody for being super safe. What I say is, there's generally a place for all of these, but let's find out how you feel about money. And what's interesting, I'm a Gen Xer. I know you can't tell I'm in my 50s, but I'm a Gen Xer, and we were taught you got to put it all at risk. But that's actually not accurate. You can become wealthy and stable doing that. So how do we do that? We really just listen. And again, social media is great, but are they going to sit down with you? Are they going to be in your life and ask you about your circumstance and what's going on? I will tell you, I've had more people really successful, in some cases, many degrees, sit across the table from me and say things like, no one ever asked me that before, So genuine care and concern for the other human being is where this begins. And if they can win financially, then we win secondarily. And it should always be in that order. I know that's how you guys serve people. But yeah, I started to try to keep up with all the things they were watching, and I just can't. But it's kind of the same thing over and over again. So I'm pretty teed up, ready for that when it comes in. A lot of unrealistic expectations too. So one of the things we teach people is how money actually works and what's at stake. So when you mention Bitcoin, there's a lot of electronic currencies, virtual currencies, etc., and that's just not my area. So you want to play with that? That's entirely up to you, but that's also really important because there's very few people who can be all things to all people. We understand our market, are licensed and regulated to do that. So that's where we go. But in the beginning, I tried to answer every question. Now it's like, it's great that you know about that, but let's take it back to what do you really want to accomplish?
Today, we're very excited to have a guest who's going to talk about something that I think it's not overlooked so much when you're going through divorce, but unfortunately, we see it get pushed to the back burner at a time when things are most stressful for people. So, when you're going through divorce, everything in your life is tumultuous. You're going through things, and some people, unfortunately, will turn to substances and other activities to dull that pain at a time when they probably shouldn't. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you do and what you're going to talk about today.
My name is Machion Garrison, and I am a therapist. I have a master's in clinical psychology from Pepperdine University. I'm also an addiction counselor, and I'm also an ordained minister, so I kind of cover the gamut. I've been doing this kind of passionate work since 1998. And it is because of my own journey through addiction. So I'm very happy to be here. And I think the topic is so relevant much more relevant than we would imagine it would be. It's extremely important because it covers a lot of the spectrum that needs to be said.
Mm-hmm. And where we see it the most in what we do is, we're dealing with one party or another, we'll find that somebody starts drinking more, or there'll be allegations of somebody starting to drinking more. But, from a psychological perspective, it's a little bit more than just picking up a beer and having a beer, right? It's a little bit more than that. So how would you define addiction beyond the physical dependency?
Well, addiction is best defined in that first step of the 12 steps, which says, I admit that I'm powerless over my addiction and that my life has become unmanageable. So the psychological part of that is we believe that we have to habitually do something in order to feel normal and function, when really it's the opposite.
Mm-hmm. And addiction kind of comes in all shapes and forms. I said, you think about the person drinking too much. I had a client that wouldn't stop working out. He literally started spending 8 and 9 hours a day into the gym and ended up in the hospital and getting fired from work because he wasn't doing his job because he found something else. So what are the needs that it kind of fills, right? We look at addiction, it's going to fill something or we wouldn't do it.
Right. What we always have to look at, especially in these days and times when mental health care is really jettisoning, it's really it's a positive trajectory. So we have to think about what are the reasons that people are the way they are, because no one comes out of the womb thinking they need a substance or something else to distract them from the truth. Mm-hmm. I always use the illustration that just every addict that I help can latch on to. It's like, okay, when you take the first drink in your life, and it may be peer pressure, it may be just your environment, and you take it and it feels great. It's like, oh my God, what is this? I never felt this way before. And okay, you may be able to socially do that. Here's where the problem comes in. When you say, oh, Jesus Christ, I had a hard day at work. Let me go ahead and pour a drink and make myself feel better. I'm going to go ahead and relax. See, that's when it becomes a solution and not recreation. It's not social. It's your answer. So go ahead.
I was going to say that's probably where I've seen it, is where people say, oh no, like, you get out of a stressful court situation, like, oh, what are you going to do tonight? Like, I'm going to go have a drink. Like, maybe you should just go walk on the treadmill, right? Do something else.
Yeah. I mean, we could reframe that, but that's where cognitive behavioral therapy comes in. We try to help people reframe the negative thoughts to make them positive. And that takes a while, So you're right. If you could just replace that thought, it would be good.
Yeah, I talked to somebody one time and they sat down and figured out how much money they spent on their addiction and realized that they could put a pool in for their family in 5 years if they stopped. And so he went and he got something. It was a computer thing that just tracked his spending. And he said that helped him because in 5 years he was able to afford a pool. I was like, that was a lot of habit. Welcome back to I Now Pronounce You Divorce. Today, we have a guest who came back. Danielle, you want to remind everybody what you do and how Our Family Wizard can really help people through these challenging times?
Yes, I am a family law attorney who no longer practices, and I work for the co-parenting application OurFamilyWizard. It's a co-parenting platform that allows for parents living separately, or sometimes it's not always parents, it might be grandparent or whatever, but the people who are caring for the child, to stay organized and to have easy documentation so that they know exactly what happens between them in terms of all of their communication, their scheduling of events, calendaring, expenses, and the like. And it has a lot of tools also to help parties move forward in a better way and set them up for success and ultimately benefit the children.
Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about the platform, Our Family Wizard, I know, I'm sure as a practicing attorney, you remember you're trying to tell people like, hey, everything you put in writing matters. Okay. But this really helps reduce conflict by almost forcing people to put it in writing, right?
Exactly. It really can help folks to move forward in a better way, because not only are they putting everything in writing and all their communication has to be in one spot, but they do know that they're not able to alter or delete any of that communication. So everything that they communicate to their co-parent or other party is something that can be seen by a judge if needed. And in any case, there's a clear record that can't be altered or deleted. So it really is able to encourage folks to move forward in a better way, knowing that everything that is being communicated is on the record.
As you're talking about, making plans and using calendars, what are some of the proactive steps co-parents can take during the holidays to lower the stress and really focus back in on their children?
Yeah, I think ideally, obviously, would be to set up the holiday schedule well in advance, according to whatever their agreement or order is, but to have that in there even for years to come. Some folks really like to plan. They want to know this year I'm going to have the kids on Christmas, next year the other party's going to have them on Christmas, be able to plan things with extended family and things like that. So I would say, of course, always having it as far in advance as possible, and then always letting the other party know of anything that comes up as far in advance as possible. So putting those extra events on the calendar and things like that. So there's a lot of time for them to communicate, and it's not in the heat of the moment. Anything that's last minute is more stressful for parents, and that is especially true at holiday time. So if they're able to have a clear idea of what their parenting time is going to look like in the holidays, it really helps, because I know there would be situations where they didn't use a tool like OurFamilyWizard, and so they are looking at their agreement or order and they've got a discrepancy in their mind about who's getting the kids when, because they're not sure whether this holiday time overrides the fact that they're only allowed to have 10 consecutive days without seeing the child. Like, there's all different kinds of provisions that could be in an agreement or order. If you have that in a visual calendar that you're both looking at, far in advance what it's like, so then you can try to work out any issues that there might be well in advance, not at the last minute when everyone's upset and freaking out, to be honest.
Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please hit like or subscribe and share it with your friends, because our goal is to try to provide as much information on divorce as we possibly can to help everyone to that next step in their life.
Give us a call and set up a free consultation with one of our client service coordinators today.